Okay.
All right.
All right, we are recording. Hi, everybody. This is David P. France, and I'm coming to you from Basel, Switzerland. I want to thank you guys for keeping up with me and keeping up with the interviews in the channel. We are growing rather nicely. We're on YouTube and BitChute. And if you happen to be watching or viewing the video, please like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel or the BitChute channel as well. Today I have Christal Brown. Once again, we talked to Christal a couple of months ago. Christal is the professor of dance at Middlebury College, and she is also the chief visioning officer for Steps and Stages Coaching. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
How you doing? All is well?
All is well. I can't complain.
I can't complain, huh? Last time we spoke, we gave, well, generally what's happening is that I'm introducing people to all of these great artists and thought leaders and people with just backgrounds and perspectives that we don't normally hear on mainstream or even alternative. What do you think, since we've talked the last time, what's been going on with you, and then can you tell me what you believe is going on at this moment as we gear into the September after Labor Day?
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll tell you a little bit about what I've been up to, then I'll tell you what I think is happening around me and maybe around the world. I don't really know. I feel like energy is so infinite that we probably are all experiencing the same thing regardless of geography. So, again, like David said, you know, I'm a professor of dance. I'm actually on sabbatical this year from the college where I serve as an associate professor. And this sabbatical was planned before the pandemic, so I feel really taken care of in the way that there's certain momentum that is pushing me towards developing my coaching and my facilitation and my consulting business, which is called Steps and Stages Coaching. And so in this pandemic, just in the last 3 months, we've developed some courses that are offshoots of the methodology that I'm trained in by the Brave Thinking Institute, which is dream building and life mastery. So in the past 3 months, we have designed Dream Building for Artists, Dream Building for Believers, and tomorrow we're launching Dream Builders for Educators. So these are kind of foundational courses that are a month long, and participants register, and for 2 hours a week, we dive into the principles of dream building, which are defining, blueprinting, and actualizing a vision for the life you would love to live. So we're doing that in these different communities because those are the 3 main communities that I feel really connected to: my artist community, my faith community, the educational community. And right now in this educational shift where, you know, it's ambiguous. People don't really know what education is going to look like. The classroom is going to be a different state of mind, much less a different geographic location. And also what it means for someone who is inspiring and educating others to be inspired and educated themselves, right? So as if you're a psychotherapist, most therapists have a therapist. I'm a coach. I have a coach, right? I'm an educator. I still have teachers who I glean and learn from. So there's a way that I wanted to put this program into place for educators to feel supported in this transition. And then the other part of it is I really wanted to be very clear that in this social unrest in America and also the global pandemic, there's something that needs to be done for people who look like me, right? I hear all the time that your #1 client is the person you used to be, right? And so I think that that inspired me to create a summit that we just started yesterday called Brown Girls Dreaming. And we're talking to Black women specifically with 3 other coaches aside from myself, a financial coach, a holistic health coach, and a mental health coach, and myself, talking about dream building in a tool-based sense. Because what I see around me, David, not just here, but across the world, is that this intergenerational transmission of knowledge is something that we lost. And it's been kind of substituted by Google, or, you know, this educational system. And what we're missing is that colloquial transfer of information that says, I know what it feels like to be you in this moment, and I can give you some mentorship, because we either have mentors or we make mistakes. That's one of those little sayings from a guy I follow named Willie Moore Jr., but he's like, you can have a mentor or you can make some mistakes. And it doesn't mean that mistakes are bad, because we're all going to make them. But if you have someone in your corner, someone you can ask those difficult questions and not feel embarrassed or not feel overwhelmed by the advice they give you, then you're more likely to make progress and rather than the mistakes. So that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that people have a lot of questions, and that getting the answers these days feels a little bit closer in terms of acquiring the information, but more distant in the practice and the knowledge of knowing how to really gain deep understanding.
Well, I'm just going to tell you the first thing that comes to my mind. They're not people, there aren't younger people that are making the connection between who they are. Let's say they're black and brown people. They're not people out there that can make that connection and see what's going on and say, I need to reach out to somebody. Because look, I will tell you that I had mentors, but not necessarily in the classic or traditional sense.
Right, right.
Right. So I've reached out to people who I wanted to have mentored me, and I didn't necessarily get a classical mentor relationship. I had to glean or get information from them however I could.
Right.
And I also made the assumption, aren't there people out there that make the assumption that, hey, there are people out there that know more than me, so therefore I need to take it upon myself to find out who these people are. I mean, am I right, or am I mean,
I think you're right. I think you're right, but I think the asking somehow has been stigmatized.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
There's some type of shame these days with not knowing. And I see it in the younger generation. You know, I think they grow up in a perfectionistic mentality that the things they see on their phone or on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all this seems like it's created and it's a whole thought and it's perfect. Right. And so they grow up with that perfectionism as a way that they think the world works. But that perfectionism doesn't come with the understanding of process.
Right. I understand.
And so kind of step by step, they're missing that part. And then that's where the questions come in. I mean, one of the most dear moments I had with one of my college students, probably about a year ago, is that we were talking and she spilled her coffee on her leggings. And she was like, oh, man. And I was like, it's okay. Like, let's just go get a wet paper towel and, you know, some soap. And you put this dry paper towel behind the stain. You put the wet one on top. It soaks too. She was like, oh, my God, Christal, these are the things I need to know. No one's teaching me this. Right? And so I teach at a really, you know, predominant, amazing institution where what my mama would say, that lack of common sense is debilitating.
And what do you think is why is this happening, or what's the driving force in this, in creating this situation?
I think the driving force, really, David, and I think it's not just with the doing of little things, but it's the interactions we have with each other. Because we have grown to rely on this and all its power and all its information, we have a lack of curiosity about each other. And that lack of curiosity keeps us from asking questions. It keeps us from being vulnerable, and it keeps us from investigating, right? Like, you know, I remember being a kid and my cousin and I used to get in trouble for going into the bathroom and just mixing different stuff together to see what would happen. Right. You know, your mother be like, where's all the mouthwash? Where's all the just perox, just throwing stuff together, just like it's an investigation. Right. And so that investigation, we don't really do it. We do things like, well, what happens if you mix peroxide and toothpaste? Oh, I don't know. Let me see. Oh, this guy did it on YouTube already. And Right. What? Like it's that hands-on. It's not that hands-on investigation of getting dirty or being able to fail in a way that gives you feedback.
But the thing is that, and I see it coming because I'll be starting a new day job in the next month. And I think the issue that you have laid out is exactly the issue that this particular group is facing.
Yeah.
But there are some people who are in our group, in our generation, who are also in that same situation, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
in other words, but I do think the difference is we know, I don't want to use the word we know better, the phrase we know better, but we know what it's like to have curiosity, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that I think is interesting is I think that you have to continue to have it as you are, or as you become an adult. I think that's part of why I'm doing these interviews, because I felt a sense that people were stuck and they weren't critically thinking. It's almost as if they're on this hamster wheel,
Yeah.
and they want to check off boxes. Now, the checking off boxes is sort of it's messing or is causing problems within whatever community you're in. Right? So specifically, in other words, let me give you another example. There were people that mentored me, that gave me information about what it was like to be Black and brown in the United States. I don't have those kinds of conversations with people the way that I had them with my peers and the way that I had with them with older people. I do not have those conversations with younger people.
Yeah.
Partly is that, okay, I'm maybe not in the environment that's conducive for that. But on the flip side, I would say that that's not necessarily true, because my community, the people that I know, actually, I'm still in touch with, right? So that means their kids, you know what I mean, or my relatives, right? But there's not as much depth there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
you're right. I think the organic nature of it has changed. And then I think, especially with Black and brown people, the word mentor was changed, in its connotation was changed about, say late 90s, early 2000s, to mean something like if you had a mentor, you had a gap in your life.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right. There were these kind of structured, institutionalized mentor relationships that meant, oh, well, this kid needs this because there's something lacking.
I see.
Right. And so the stigma of like being in a program with a mentor, I think also there's something about that languaging that was shifted early on. And it turned into, really what I think we're talking about is like, most of the information I got about what it meant to be a woman and be a Black woman in America, I learned getting my hair done on Saturday mornings, and not saying a word, just listening.
Just listening, right?
Right.
Well, I'm going to ask you what did you learn as a Black woman when you got your hair done? But let's first go to, with regard to these courses, right? You talk about these dream building. First of all, when you say dream building, or when you use the word dream, is there, and it's sort of to attach what we've just talked about, is there an issue with people dreaming? and if so, why? Right? And if so, why?
Yeah. I do. That's a really great question, David. I do think that people have a hard time dreaming. I think because one is that our education system says that imagination is for little kids. That's one. It then says that people who are artists and creatives are special, right? So there's a chasm of people in between who feel like their imagination is frivolous, and they feel like their creativity is not up to par to be called a creative, right? So in the middle of that is a large sector of people who have been taught that their dreams are only for entertainment. And when they're only dreaming for entertainment, it's inspiration without action. And the dream building program, or the dream building methodology that I'm certified in, is really about bringing that imagination, that mental faculty of vision, with the action of practice, which is faith building, and putting that together to build something that you can see the evidence of every day.
Similar to how you or how one choreographs or teaches with regard to dance. I mean, there's a link. I mean,
Yeah,
again, one of the reasons why I'm doing these interviews is that people saw me as a dancer, but they couldn't understand the why. Did not understand the why. They still don't. They did not understand the why. And what I was trying to impart was that idea of creation, having an idea, and seeing the idea manifest and taking it all the way to the end. Now, not all. I wouldn't say that I've been always successful in that, but I've been successful more times than I have not been.
Right.
Right. And I think that's the idea. And again, it goes to your point of, trying to get somewhere, right? And seeing whether you can do it, right?
Right.
Right.
And materializing a vision.
Right.
Right. It's not just a hope. It's not just like, oh, yeah, this thing that I want, and I just keep thinking about it. No, it's going up. It's showing up to the studio every day and figuring out what makes sense in your body. And not only that, but as the choreographer, being able to convince someone else, maybe multiple people, how to buy in and to really bring your vision to fruition. So that is what that's what I do with my clients in these groups, is really ask them to lay out their vision, and then one, convince themselves, and then two, live it from where it is right now. It's not a delay. It's right now.
Oh, they don't know how to convince themselves? Is that one of the issues? And how do you go about convincing yourself? I mean, that is, because I think the two are, all of it's so intricately linked, right? It's almost like for me, it's a given, right? It's a given. No, so
it's not. It's like it's like for a carpenter or for a chef, there are things that are a given, Right. And I'm just like, oh, you really do that with the eggs? Oh, okay, sorry, I don't know, right? And so for us, it might feel like it's second nature, but again, for people who are trained in an educational and a work environment where creativity is not necessarily valued unless it is for someone else's end, right? You can be as creative as you want for the goal of the organization, right? Or you can be as persistent and aggressive as you want for someone else's end. People believing in their own truth and their own dreams and pursuing it with that same rigor and that same devotion, when it doesn't have an outside accreditation to it.
So it's why, let's say when I was in college, all these creative people thought in order for them to be creative that they had to get another degree, right? So that the outside world could see them as legitimate.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's also an issue with regard, we can get more specific with regard to dance and how dance has become part of a curriculum within universities, right?
Oh, yeah.
So in other words, the BFA and the MFA, it's important, particularly I think when you are making a career in dance, right? And specifically if you're teaching as well. But it does not take place of some of the fundamental things that you have to have as someone that is living, breathing, and working within that community in order to be successful.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, David, because, when we think about arts and the artist, and Bamuthi Joseph, who's the director of social impact at the Kennedy Center, just made a statement on an interview the other day that said something to the effect of, if the artists are really driving culture and a country is not treating their artists well, then what does it say about the culture?
Right.
Right. And so what we've done in terms of institutionalizing dance training is we've tried to legitimize, based on another hierarchical system, that art and artists are valid.
Right.
And so there are many people who are continuing to have that inner struggle because they've been taught for so long that what they do is not valid. No matter how many hours, no matter how much sweat and tears, we still have this debilitating misnomer of the starving artist. Like, oh, you're going to be broke. We still tell children that. And I have to debunk that at every turn of like, I'm not hungry and I can't make dances when I am hungry. So let's just go ahead and kill that starving artist. Like, it's not what we're doing here. And so really that becomes another layer, that detangling of the outside voice being louder than the inner voice. And that's really another part of the dream building methodology is what's happening in here? How long have you not listened to that still small voice? And how much are you going to do to keep drowning it out rather than bringing it forward?
Let's say that some of the aspects of the courses is that it helps people get in touch with that inner voice. It's usually, the inner voice, it would be interesting to have like sort of a conversation, with people on the street about this inner voice, right? Because I know, well, it's been getting louder and louder as I've gotten older and older, right? Let's just put it that way. I know sometimes I'll listen to it. Sometimes I'll go against it if it is unclear. Like I'll take a risk. Let's say if it's a 50-50, right? If there's a 50-50, I may go against it and see what the results are going to be, right? I mean, but more times than not, look, as I'm talking to you right now, I already know what my inner voice is telling me.
Yeah, right. But that's because you're in conversation with that voice, probably on a daily basis. Some people haven't checked into that in years, or they're so afraid to check in with it because it's where the longing and the disappointment and the greater vision come from. And there's that paradigm of fear that surrounds the next step to actually do that thing. It's daunting.
Tell me more specific about the course. Is there anything that you want to relay to the audience about any of the courses that you've developed and what they can expect if they say, okay, I'm interested in?
Well, I mean, I tell all my clients, incoming clients, prospective clients, that, transformation is possible and it's hard to do by yourself. I don't think there's any change in my life, any growth in my life that's ever happened with just me and my willpower, right? It just doesn't happen. And so we're kind of built to relate to others and learn and grow through practice and story and coaching. And it's really what this is all about. Being someone's vision partner is what I do best, right? It's exactly what I've been doing in education for many years. It's the visioning of being an artist with the pedagogy of education put into a package that allows me to really individualize my skill set for the greater good of other people, to maximize the potential of their lives. And so transformation is what we're about,
How did this come to you? I mean, like, were you, we may have talked about this during the last interview, but how did you, you seemed like everything is lining up. You got this great job at the university. At what point did you say, okay, I've got to do some coaching, or I have to, develop this other idea?
Yeah, well, I got to a point, David, where one of my core values is love, and I love to love people. And I realized that there are many people who wanted to be close to me or do the work that I'm doing in the studio with dancers and artists, but they don't dance. And that was a barrier. And so I really wanted to know and have the skills to be able to come outside of the studio, outside of the art dance environment, and really impact other people. And so I knew I had to really get the skills to translate that. And, there's this thing about gratitude that I think some people miss, in that it's okay to have and want more. Mm-hmm. It is perfectly okay to be successful and want more, because that's where the next growth process comes from. So you're totally right. I have an amazing job. I've lived out my dreams. I've gotten to the highest point of what the career trajectory of my field is. It's like, go to undergrad, perform, build your own company, go into university, chair the department. I'm done. That's it. right? So there was something else. And I was like, what is next? And this is what was next.
It is fascinating because, and I told you this before, I saw you, well, let me double back. Part of what I know how to do is that I can figure out people's ability, talent, just by watching them, right? Part of it has to do, I think, it has to do with my ability with regard to movement.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily have to see a dancer in terms of this, you know, how I know how to do this. I can also read what the person writes.
Yeah.
I can also listen to what the person, how the person speaks. All kinds of different ways that they communicate, not just with their mouth, but with their entire body.
Yeah.
Right. And then what comes out. And so I told you that I think I saw you at the Philly Fringe. That's how I remember seeing you. And I was blown away by your ability to move. It was on another level.
That's amazing.
In other words, you know, there are a lot of times people will put together a program and they've got all of this meaning that they put out to you in order for you to understand, and particularly if it's, you know, African diaspora, right? This is, I think, what the idea of the group or the show that we performed in. But I think you just were like, all right, this is me. There was a level where it was above any label. Understand what I'm saying? So I got the essence of who you were. Can't explain it fully, but I was like, boom, you know, I was like, and of course, of all of the people that performed there, you're the only one that is memorable in my mind, right? So I knew right then what I was trying to do with this particular interview program had not manifested. But I knew that I had to stay in touch with you in some way. Right. And I think when Facebook came, I was like, all right, there she is, whatever. Let me make sure I'm connected with her in that way. You know,
David, that's really amazing because it brings to light something that we just had an experience with last Monday. Monday was, I think, August 3rd. And 2 weeks before that, we got this email. My company and I got this email from the Kennedy Center saying, hey, we're going to stream some live performances. Can you perform for an hour? And we were just like, from the basement. And the inner voice was like, yes, we're up for the challenge. And then the outer voices were like, from the basement? How is this going to go? Right? And so we streamed this thing live. And when you post this, I'll drop the link in the comments if people want to watch the show. But the biggest compliment we got from that was that people said, oh, I actually forgot I was online. You know, they were watching dance through this medium and were teary-eyed. We're like, oh my God, this is really moving me. And that in itself was one of the biggest compliments, you know, because what we keep thinking about our craft and about the arts and about not being together is that it keeps us from being together. And to bridge that gap and to make that connection was really powerful for us.
Let me ask you a question. Why do you think that, or let me put it this way, do you think that the United States treats its artists well?
Well, I think it's twofold. Does it treat its artists well? I would say the industry of artists that it creates have an established quality of life, which some people may equate to wellness. But I will say as a whole, the field or the occupation of artists or the role of artists in community is not a universal United Statesian American understanding. And by that, I mean that I think a lot of people don't really understand that the role of the artist is to elevate the consciousness of the people, to translate the desires and the iniquities, the inequities, all the you know, stuff of the mind of the people, of the energy that surrounds them. And I think sometimes that's really misunderstood when people don't actually know how they're feeling. So to watch someone else manifest or bring to life a truth that they have not grappled with or understood within themselves really puts, I think, artists and communities sometimes at odds, because there's a lack of understanding of process. So the product is seen as something to be critiqued, dismantled, rather than understood and engaged with.
I'm laughing because I'm relating to what you're saying, because in some ways you're saying that there are a lot of people that are going to critique, but they critique with no understanding, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, or in other words, more specifically, if they really understood the process, there would be less critiquing as we know it, or what,
Right.
in terms of how we know it, in media or newspapers as it used to be,
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
people would have a review, and that review could actually impact whether more people are going to come to your show.
Exactly.
Right. In other words, you could still critique a show, but also talk about the process, or what you as a critic would think, what you would think the process is or would be.
Yeah, but I mean, you're drawing a distinct parallel to what we were talking about earlier in terms of this inside and outside voice. The inside voice has a desire. The outside voice has an opinion.
Right.
Right. And so that's very clear in our own lives. Like, I can say to myself, oh my God, I have a deep desire to meet Oprah. Okay. Right. I have a deep desire to meet Oprah. I say that all the time. I wear t-shirts that say Oprah is my spirit animal. On the outside voice is like, well, have you written to her producers? Have you done it? Like, all of that. Right. There's a difference between the action of it and the desire of it. And so when an artist is putting action to their desire, but someone who doesn't know where that desire comes from, or have any action, have never taken a step in the way of doing that, it's really a hard conversation to have.
How do you teach that to people, though? I mean, I think that's what we're trying to do, right? In some way.
I think that, but it goes back to the question of curiosity rather than critique. If you went up to an artist and said, how did you make this, rather than, oh, I really didn't like when, or I really loved when, right? Starting the conversation with a question usually changes the dynamic of the interaction.
It's just interesting to me, because it's almost, and I'll tell you like this. I mean, I'm in my 50s now, and, I wrote on Facebook that I have this new role, a new job. More people commented on this than, I mean, I'm putting all kinds of creative, artistic things that I'm hoping will provoke people's imaginations, their curiosity, conversation as a result of, around these pictures. All I think people can relate to is like, they've got a new job. And I'm like, I understand that. But I'm like, you guys are looking at all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Are you sequentially, if you are you adding all of that up, come to some idea of what the job now means, right? In addition to all the other stuff that you're watching. I mean, there has been, you understand what I'm talking about, right?
I do.
It's the heart of what you're saying.
Yeah, living the dream has been boiled down to the success quotient. And the success quotient is traditional. It still looks very traditional. In terms of work, school, job, stability, income. That's it. Retirement.
But then we'll put up a video of somebody, and this is where it gets a little, and this is what I've tried to do with dance, right? So I've tried to, not necessarily in the way that the BFA and the MFA, but what I've tried to do is canonize, if you want to call it that, but to place dance, to place people's opinions in the same realm as he has a job. And sure, and it's a big task, but there are other people who have done that, right? In our lives that, you know, when they're being interviewed, you're going to tune in to the interview.
Yeah.
Right. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to literally find these creative people and showcase what their thought process is, or how they do what it is that they do, so that people can get an understanding that it's bigger than just what the end result is, or what
Yes.
the tangible thing that they can see and understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, looking at having the perspective that every milestone is not the end of the success train, but the beginning of a new question.
I agree. I'm right here. Let me ask you about the last time we had the conversation with generally we have a pre-conversation. We talked about having the right relationship. Now, does this go to the idea of mentoring, or can you elaborate on I don't remember exactly, but I think it was around the idea of mentoring and sort of having certain types of relationships that are going to help you grow,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah. And I think where we're getting at is this idea of being right or being righteous. And so for some people, righteousness may come as a religious connotation of a word, but it actually means to be in right relationship. Right. So I can be in right relationship with my money. I can be in right relationship with my spouse. I can be in right relationship with my occupation or my vocari. Being in the right relationship means that my gifts and talents are intersecting with the question that my gifts and talents can answer. It means that my gifts and talents are pushing or being pushed by another person's gifts and talents. But it really means that the synthesis of the moment of the idea and of the action is bringing something else to fruition or raising the bar for both people or the people involved, right? So most of the time when I'm on with a client, you know, really kind of in the midst of, in the trenches about this dream building process and bringing the past into the present and befriending the fear and moving forward even when you're afraid, it usually comes to a question. And the question is usually asked of me, but I believe that all of my clients are their own highest authority. They just don't know it yet. So it's really not about my advice. It's about the provocation of their deeper intuition, right? And so when we think about it that way, this idea of being righteous also is about ourselves and being in right relationship with the persona and the personality and the person and the, pursuit of something, all of these layers of ourselves being in right relationship to actualize our fullest potential and capacity.
And would you say that there are certain people that understand this relationship between the different areas or aspects you just mentioned? They understand it at a very core basic level, and others do not, right? So that may be the difference between why someone will excel and how quickly they excel.
Yes.
Right. So in other words, there's some other element, meaning it could be emotional intelligence, it could be some other form that is informing the inner and the outer, how the person comes together in order for that person to move.
Totally. I think you're totally right. I think some people have a deeper physiological understanding, and some people have what I like to call a logical understanding. So there's the head, there's the heart, and there's the feet. There's the I think about it, I feel it, I act on it. The feet are like taking a step towards it. And so this idea that I have clients who have read about this type of work, have been really trying to self-actualize this type of work on their own by reading the self-help books and trying to make a plan for themselves. But without that accountability and without that person to really bounce that back off, kind of really be in conversation or relationship with, then it kind of falls flat. And it never gets from the head to the heart, to the feet. That trickle down never happens. And there's some people who feel it so deeply that they can't put a framework to it and they don't know the next step. And there's some people who just have the gusto and they're doing, but they don't know why and they don't know how. So it's really, again, that intersection or that way that this integration of the information comes together.
And I think that's what comes to the next point that I wrote when we were talking before, which was what you see versus what you feel. I think that was, that's what you're talking about, right? So in other words, people sometimes have to see it, believe it.
Right.
Other people, it's a feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's a feeling. But, you know, one of these things that I'm going to have to think about how to do this, because you're making me feel like I need to not teach a course. It wouldn't be online, but even having a discussion of what we just talked about. Yeah. Because I'm now feeling there is a big difference between the people that let's say the people that I went to college with. They have no idea what you and I are talking about. they have no. Now we were measured in this traditional manner.
Yeah.
Right, which was memorization of facts and then regurgitating it out in a certain way that would mirror what the professor or how the professor would think or write. Right, which is a skill and a talent, that is for sure.
It is, yeah.
You know, but coming from me, I always did it like this. Right? I was actually trying to convince the professor of what I thought.
Right.
I felt, which would always give me substandard performance, right? I'm just, you know, letting you know that's how it went down. But I think, you know, what you're touching on, what we're talking about is really, really important. And I think it's important even now when we're in the midst of this global pandemic because, and I'll just give you an example. There is a narrative that is being presented to the public in terms of what is the right way and what is the wrong way, right? With regard to how treatment of the virus and whether the virus is, whether it is, you can pass it on. I'm at a loss for the word.
Transmission.
Transmission, thank you. Whether it can be transmitted, how it can be transmitted, and that sort of thing. And what I see is that no one really knows. No one really knows, and a lot of people are, and how that information is being presented and passed on through the media. I mean, I'm not saying it's a dice roll, but I think it's it's a big gap, bigger than what people really understand and believe, right? So when you're talking about an unknown quantity, an unknown factor, this is when your critical thinking skills, that curiosity, comes into play, right? Because I will tell you that there are doctors out there that are mimicking, just like they learned in college and in law and med school. They're just mimicking what the higher authorities are telling them to do.
Yeah.
And we're in a situation where it calls for, hey, let's mix this in the bathroom. Right? Let's see how this works with this works. Right? Or seeing what happened when that person was sick, or what happened when that person was sick.
Right.
That kind of thinking is the thinking, in my opinion, that is going to be rewarded finally in this particular era.
But it's the exact same. It's again, it goes back to what we've called it. We've never called medicine the healing. We've called it the practice of medicine. It's a practice. We continue to practice things, and we think that somehow when we get these degrees or these jobs that it all of a sudden makes us an expert. No, we just have a different laboratory in which to practice. Right?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, I'm 150% with you, right, in terms of what you just said. Yeah. And the funny thing is that I mean, there is an art to healing, right? There is an art to it, right? That's why they call it the healing arts. And
Right.
I will tell you that over the past 10, 15 years, my ability to heal myself, I wouldn't necessarily be as bold to say other people, right? Because I don't consider myself a healer in the
Right.
traditional sense, or if at all.
Yeah.
But I know I'm bringing something to the table. You understand what I'm saying? So I know when I'm at this point in my life, when I'm interacting with somebody, I know for sure that there is going to be some energy exchange.
Yes.
And that what I'm bringing to the table is going to make people in the long run feel better. Now, in the short run, they may have problems with me.
Right. Right. They might.
In the long run, right? In the long run, it's going to be a win.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's how our values are driving, rather than our feelings and our environment, right? The value system you're bringing to that energetic exchange is about growth and higher good. It's not about manipulation or money, right? It's a different value structure. So when you come to it with the right intention and give the attention to your values, then it has no choice but to grow.
And let me tell you, this is the best part of it. I can do this without saying a word. I can do it without saying a word. And the thing is that it has probably propelled me out of this old role that I had and into the new role.
Right.
The new role that, you know, I posted and everybody commented on and, you know, whatever. Because I have consistently, it's almost as if I had practiced how I was going to present my values.
Right.
Every situation imaginable. So let's just, from the very beginning, when the people that they were trying to actually influence my thinking about how I would see the role they hired me to do. Then I was like, they got another thing coming. Now, I didn't say that. I knew. I was like, why are they even talking to me about this?
Right.
Right. So in other words, they were trying to manipulate. And I was onto it from the very beginning. Now, 2 years is a long time to be in a position like that where you are presented. But I would say this is another thing. We were in such turbulent business condition. It is my opinion, and this is also for life, we cannot afford to be in a position to manipulate when we're at a point where the world is presenting us with serious challenges on levels that we haven't seen before.
Correct.
Right? So I'm like, I knew this thing was coming. I couldn't tell you that, it's going to be a global pandemic. I could feel this movement.
Yeah.
That we're going to have to be prepared. We're going to have to be prepared. And so then when this thing went down, I was already in the mindset. I didn't mind being at home.
Yeah, but I think, a lot of people were in the mindset. They just didn't know what they were actually feeling. How many people before this global pandemic started said multiple times, I just need a break. I just need this to stop. I need the whole world to stop for a second. Right. People don't think, they think they're just talking. Right. But when these things are multiplied, when these seeds are planted across the generations, geography, right, they have no choice but to grow.
I'm going to ask you this question. I said earlier that I was going to. What is it like to be a Black woman in today's society? I mean, that's a broad question. But in terms of going back to what the course or connecting in this other way with Black women, Black girls specifically, and mentoring, what is it like, and what's missing? And what do you think needs to happen in that space?
Well, I think right now what needs to happen in the Black woman growth space is something that I think we're seeing the beginnings of. And I think it's a multiplicity of freedoms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I think we touched on this before when we chatted, that when I was growing up, there was there were maybe about 5 Black women archetypes, and you picked one.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one you followed, right? And these archetypes, while they are at this point still, I think, really true and honest to the success quotient, they don't really give voice to the emotional capacity, the spiritual life, the tenderness of Black women. And so I think now we're being able to see more of a range, but the archetypes aren't as clear. So our younger generations don't know what they're picking. And when they're trying to pick from a lot of different places at once without having the guidance or the illustration of what that experience looks like in real life, then they sometimes flounder and get overwhelmed and anxious about creating or developing their own identity.
Okay. It's very, very interesting. I'm gonna mention this to you, and maybe we can hold this for the next time we have a conversation.
Okay.
I recently read the book by Rose McGowan, the actress, former actress, who brought down Harvey Weinstein.
Oh.
Her story, interviewed by Mia Farrow's journalist son. And I read that book in 2 days. I mean, it's not a big read, right? Not a big, but I got books here, and I haven't read books like that in 2 days. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
I just thought, I think, man, I would love to speak with her, because she used words, or she used this whole idea of being up against men. Okay. And clearly her entire life she was. I mean, she was born into a cult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? She believes that we are all born into a cult.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Our families are the first colonizers.
Yeah, I guess you're already in agreement with the family's the first cult.
Yeah, and the first colonizer. Yeah, if you don't learn our ways, then what are you going to do? Yeah.
So is what's going on with Black people, and this is a big jump, right? Specifically, or we can even talk about Black women. Does it have to do with this information that we learn in this cult?
Yes.
And the deprogramming that has to take place. In other words, I mean, here's somebody like Rose McGowan. She is not Black,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
But when I got through the book, they were connection. I made some connections there, yeah. Right? Like, I could see myself running throughout her narrative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
I realized that I had to do some more work.
The life work.
It's a lifelong thing, right? It's a lifelong thing. And maybe that was why, I was in a bit of a funk days ago or whatever. I was supposed to go out and have not a vacation, I wouldn't call it, just a relaxed, a relaxed situation. And I read that book in 2 days, and I was like, okay, I gotta go back home. Back home. I could not. You see what I mean? I could not do any more relaxation.
Yeah.
But I would recommend anybody to read it. And I just saw some parallels between being Black in America, and the things that go on in the Black community, and her story. And that's a big jump. A lot of people maybe may shoot that down, but I in terms of being in a cult, deprogramming.
Yeah. I think the only difference, David, is that one is bred for success and the other is bred for survival.
Right. But look, you talk about survival. Right. The survival thing. It's like, I mean, she's literally, I mean, that's from the day one, I guess, when she was born. She's
Yeah.
in survival mode.
Yeah. Yeah.
The acting came as a result of the fact that she had to act her entire life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she says, float out of her body.
Yeah.
Now, where that ties into being an artist, though, because eventually I thought, I sometimes wish, like, man, I would love to talk to her because she saw acting as a means to an end, right? But again, it's one of the reasons why I'm creating the series. It's like, look, I'm interested in people coming together with the positive, being in a positive mindset, knowing how to do this work in order to have a something that is, positive in the end.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
one of the issues that I have when I'm interacting with artists. A lot of artists don't understand how to do that
Right.
on purpose.
Yeah. But that's something they come from such a feeling place that the logical structure doesn't, again, it's about synthesizing. There's another program that I teach that I'm certified in called Into Your Genius, which is really about, we think of young babies as being so smart, they're like, oh, look, she did this today, he did that today, he's so smart. And it's really because they are understanding the world through many different ways, right? Synthesizing information through touch, smell, taste, hear, right? And they don't have that communicative layer where they know that if they say one thing, it directly means this to another person, right? So they're figuring all that out at once. So what we do is as we grow older, we stop using all the senses. We stop sensitizing our learning. And so when we kind of get really linear and granular and we go to school for this one thing and we get really great at it, we do our 10,000 hours, we're a master, we do these things, but it then just makes the other ways that we understand the world dull, and those senses don't get activated. But when we're understanding our environment and our world and situations and we can synthesize it through multiple understandings, that's really what genius means.
Well, I'll leave you with this. I was in Montreux yesterday, was it? 2 days ago, over the weekend. And we went to a number of small towns in the French section of Switzerland, in the south, right on Lake Geneva. And we went to Montreux, which is the home of the Montreux Jazz Festival, right? Of course, jazz comes from the African-American tradition, right? And this festival was started by a gentleman, his name is Claude Nobes. I think I may not be pronouncing the last name correctly, Nobs. And we went into a restaurant where we had been the year before, and we partied, it was great. And there were pictures and photographs of Quincy Jones, B.B. King, all of the geniuses. And the conversation was, there are no more geniuses because they're all online. The process of how a genius is created is different, right? And so what the person who I was with said, who is a dancer, a very was a gifted dancer with Bejar Ballet and she has her own school in Lausanne. He said, the whole idea is that you have to go away, right? And you develop, then all of a sudden you present, and it's through your presentation and you're moving in this way to become a genius, people talking about it and actually finding you, not you going out and presenting in the way that we now know online.
Right.
The process is very different. So as we were going through the restaurant, I was really quite sad because I knew that era was over, right? I mean, Quincy Jones, big picture of him.
Yeah.
Big picture of him. Even had Rolling Stones. They had all kinds of people in that era that were doing their thing and are, considered genius. I at least wanted to throw that out to you, and get your opinion.
Yeah.
What is genius in this day and age?
That's interesting because I think what your colleague is talking about is more of entrepreneurship than genius.
Uh-huh.
And so that's, I mean, I haven't actually put a lot of thought to that parallel of the self-created genius in this day and age. We kind of look at it as like a socialite or a YouTube or Instagram celebrity. And the work of doing that, I think, is really intentional, and it is a lot of work. But I don't think it's a synthesis of talents and gifts that create something new and make someone special. I think it's a mechanism that you could probably put anyone into who had a desire to work, and you could probably create one. But that's just my opinion. You know, who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. What we used to, or at least what we, you know, came up on was this presentation of genius in as a creative or an artistic way, in this artistic way. And I will tell you, I knew that it was fleeting even when I started my own dance company. I knew that the process of what Stevie Wonder, B.B. King, I knew it was fleeting when I started.
Yeah, yeah.
And part of what I wanted to do with my dance company was find these young people so that we, and much like what you're doing in your role, in your different roles, to get them to see how to do that, right? And recently, someone who was in the company posted a video from a video that we did years ago. And I was like, I looked at the video and I said, wait a minute, we did well. Like, 'cause in my mind, I'm competing against traditional, all of these other people that we just talked about, but you know, the people that I see in Montreux, right?
Right.
In terms of what I presented or what I did in this day and age, it had some legs. Meaning, I was like, wait a minute, it actually had weight. We looked, that little clip looked good. It looked great.
Yeah.
During the time, I was like, oh, come on. Like, I mean, I wanted it to be, you know, but I think that process, it will be very interesting. And we'll leave you this. It will be very interesting to see what happens to the new leadership in dance once this pandemic, you know, tapers off, hopefully. What will happen and how the arts organization plan to get their audience back.
Yeah.
And also present their choice and choice of artists to present after the pandemic goes down and they're trying to get their audience back.
Right, right, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Is there anything else that that's on your mind that you'd like to?
No, Dave, I think that's it. It's always a pleasure talking to you. So again, you know, if people want to watch the Kennedy Center show, that's great. If they want to learn more about the coaching, they can go to lifestepsandstages.com, and there's plenty of material there they can check into.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Right now, now my energy's up, and you didn't charge me for a coaching fee.
No.
You know, have a great rest of your Sunday.
All right, thank you.
We'll put this up as soon as possible. I mean, I'll download it and we'll get it moving. And if I have any questions, I'll reach out to you. And you send me the information you want.
All right, great.
Okay?
I'll send you that link and stuff now before I forget.
All right, absolutely.
All right.
Great. Cheers. Bye-bye.